Every morning, not long after the sun has risen, it's time for me to reluctantly hop out of bed and get my breakfast. My morning doesn't truly begin, though, until I have eaten my 2 fried eggs. It's a tradition that I've participated in for as long as I could remember. As a child, my mother would cook me 2 fried eggs every morning, and it's something that I've just adapted into my adult life. Yesterday morning started like any other. I forced myself out of bed and made my way to the kitchen. I found the carton of eggs that I kept inside the refrigerator and picked up 2 of the biggest eggs I could find. I walked over to the stove, turned it on, and started to warm up the pan. Soon enough, the pan was hot and ready to go, so I picked up the first egg, gave it a little tap on the side of the pan, and then split the contents of the shell onto the pan's hot surface. Out spilled the gooey and sticky contents of the egg onto the pan. It sizzled and began to cook as soon as it touched the burning hot surface. I reached out and grabbed the second egg and gave it a tap and then cracked it open into the pan. I expected to see another raw egg fall out of the shell as it normally would, but instead all I saw was a small piece of paper slide out of the eggshell and land in the frying pan. Just by instinct, I quickly grabbed at the paper, managed to get a hold of it by its edges, and pick it back up out of the pan before it had a chance to burn. The piece of paper was folded in two and only the size of a matchbox. I unfolded it and discovered that there was something written on the piece of paper, just 2 small words: "Help me." I stared down at the words written on the paper. I couldn't believe what I had just read, and I couldn't believe where I had just found this note. How did this note end up inside of an egg? And why does someone need help? I couldn't fathom how and why this was happening, but one thing I did want was answers. I returned to the fridge and opened it, and searched for the carton of eggs that I had grabbed this egg out of. I found it and picked it up to read the label. On the carton there was a small painting of a farmer who was wearing a large straw hat and was holding a pitchfork. Underneath the small painting were the words "Gully's Farm." This was my first clue into solving the mystery of the strange note. My first thought was to try and research the farm on the internet, which is what I spent the next hour or so doing. Initially, I couldn't find anything too interesting about Gully's Farm, only an old website that greeted me with the cartoon of a dancing chicken. The website contained no useful information. It didn't provide a phone number or an address of the farm, just a small description of what they produced there. I was no closer to finding anything useful about the farm, but that changed when I found a small forum that was discussing new farming techniques. Most of it was talking about new ways of farming, which I didn't understand, but near the bottom of the online forum, I found a comment related to Gully's Farm. The comment in its entirety read as follows: "I have recently become interested in the exciting world that is farming. In fact, I have become so interested that I am attending a job interview tomorrow at Gully's Farm. It's just a small egg farm that is run by a few local people, but I have heard of some of their new techniques for farming, and I am definitely interested in what they are planning to do. I can't say too much more, other than it has the potential to revolutionize the farming industry. Gully's Farm on Cotton Road. Remember the name, because they will be famous." I was interested in knowing more about what they were planning to do that would revolutionize the farming industry, but I also now had an address: Cotton Road. After some further research, I had discovered the location of the farm, and I now knew that it was only an hour's drive from where I lived. I wanted answers. No, I needed answers. I contemplated going to the police, but decided they wouldn't believe me. Also, if someone was in trouble, then I wanted to be the one to save them. So that's how this morning I found myself at the gates of Gully's farm. The wire fence ran along the perimeter of the farm for as far as the eye could see. It was only a meter or so high, so it would be quite easy to get over. Inside the fence, there were a few different wooden barns that ran alongside each other. They stood about 6 meters high and maybe 5 car lengths long. Next to the barns, there was countless chicken coops, lined up next to each other like an army of soldiers in formation. One chicken coop seemed to be a lot larger than the others and was near the back of the farm. The other building that I could see was a large farmhouse, which is where I guess the farmer lived. The farm seemed empty, apart from the light breeze that was slowly blowing across the open land. I made it this far, so I knew there was no turning back now. After one more quick glance around the farm and seeing no movement, I hoisted myself up over the wire fence, swung both legs over, and jumped down on the other side. I was in. I slowly crept towards one of the barns, one that seemed larger than all the others, trying my best to not make any sound and alert anyone to my presence. I was about halfway to the barn when I heard a strange sucking sound, like a vacuum, followed by a wailing scream. I stopped suddenly in my tracks and looked over to where the scream had come from. It was coming from the other side of the chicken coops. I realized that it was coming from the large chicken coop. I was still deciding what to do when I heard it again. The loud whirring sound that sounded like it was sucking something, and then the horrible screaming sound. I recognized the scream to be one of pain, so I knew I had to help whoever was inside. I quickly ran to the big chicken coop, expecting to hear the scream again, but it never came. I reached the coop, sweating and out of breath, but I had made it. I put my hand on the handle that was attached to the large wooden door that kept the coop closed. I pulled on the handle and opened the door, revealing what was inside. The first thing I noticed was the large cage that took up most of the coop. The second thing that caught my attention was the large hose that ran along the inside of the cage. I followed the hose with my eyes. At the end of it was something I really didn't expect. A woman. Only she looked slightly different. Where the woman's mouth sat, I noticed that her jaw was quite extended, almost like a beak, and I could have sworn that I saw a few feathers poking out of her skin along her arm. She was laying on the bottom of the cage, sweating and crying. She looked like she had just been through something traumatic, which I was about to find out she had. I heard the loud whirring sound again, and I saw the hose begin to constrict. I then heard a soft plopping sound followed by another. The woman on the floor let out a loud scream that I felt run down my spine. Then the sound stopped, and the hose returned to normal. I then heard a small clang from just outside of the coop. I didn't know how to react to what I had just seen and experienced. I wanted to help this poor woman, but I wasn't entirely sure how. I wanted to investigate and find out about the small clanging sound from the outside. I turned around to go and discovered what it was. But when I turned around, I was greeted by 3 metal prongs pointed directly into my face. I looked down the length of the prongs and down the long wooden handle that were attached to it. I saw that someone was clutching the pitchfork that was pointed directly at me. I saw his large straw hat and recognized this person instantly. It was the farmer from the egg carton. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" the farmer asked me. A slight southern twang was present in his voice. I didn't respond, so he spoke again. "The art of egg making. It's beautiful. The act of growing something inside of an animal, something that can provide and sustain us." I looked at the farmer, dumbfounded by what he was saying and what I had seen. "You look surprised," he continued. "Well, do you know what surprises me? The fact that you ordinary folk thought that we could continue egg demands with just chickens. You really think we can keep up with the entire population's egg consumption with just some small birds? No, of course not. We needed something else, and here at Gully's farm, we found it." It was at this point that I realized what the clanging sound outside was. I had heard the sound of an egg hitting a metal bucket before. I just didn't realize that's what it was. I knew now, though. Here at Gully's farm, we are innovating new ways to create eggs. New and exciting ways. Why only get a few eggs from a chicken when our hybrids here can produce a few hundred every couple hours? The hybrids do have a lot more space to store them. It's the way forward. It's the future. The farmer was finished speaking and let out a hearty laugh. It appeared that he was definitely happy with what was happening inside of his farm. He seemed to believe that he had actually created a whole new way of farming and that it would be the way forward for the industry. I definitely disagreed, but all I could do was nod and agree with him. Probably the pitchfork in my face helped convince me. He smiled when he saw me nod and started to lower his weapon. "So you agree," he said. "Well, perhaps you know someone that could come in for a job interview. Someone that can help us out with our little operation." Once again, I nodded and managed to say that I would try and find someone to help him. He looked pleased with this and so lowered his weapon entirely, pointing the sharp prongs toward the floor. It was at this moment that I used to escape. I ran up to the farmer and gave him a big shove. I saw him topple backwards and fall out of the chicken coop. I then ran to the door and jumped out of the coop, jumping over the farmer as I left, and then sprinted faster than I ever had before. My legs moved so quickly I soon made it to the edge of the farm. I made it back to the wire fence. I looked back over my shoulder and saw the farmer running towards me, his pitchfork raised once again. He wasn't too far away from me now, so I had to get over the fence quickly. I lifted myself up and swung over a leg, then my other leg. As I was resting on top of the fence, I saw the farmer almost at the fence, and he looked ready to use his pitchfork. I jumped down to the other side of the fence just as I saw the pitchfork leave the farmer's hand. It got caught up in the wire fence, right where I had just been. Once I was down on the other side of the fence, I continued to run. I don't remember much else after that, just that I made it to my car and started it up and was driving away from the farm as fast as the car would go. I saw the farmer climbing the fence in my rearview mirror, but I was gone before he had finished climbing over. I have only just made it back home, and I still don't know how to process today's events. All I know is that I will never be eating Gully Farms eggs again.